Alrighty, so today we're going to be talking about the E36 chassis harness. Right now we're going to start in the rear, and this would be your fuel pump and fuel level. You see the fuel pump connector and the fuel level connector. The next we have, which is all labeled, your speed sensor for the OEM cluster. And this is one of those things that we really go out of the way for the customer when it comes to the installation process, because this disconnects. That makes your life so much easier when you have to make this connection. Then we have your driver's side fuel level OEM sensor, the disconnect to the rear portion of the chassis harness. All chassis harnesses come in 3 easy to install sections. And once again, we do that for you guys so you have a nice, easy installation. So this will follow down the driver's side door jamb area. It's always best to follow SCCA rules and regulations whenever you're doing anything with any type of race car, which recommends that you put all wiring to the inside of your roll cage. And the reason behind that is if you do wreck and the wire is on the outside of the roll cage towards your body and your body pushes in and pinches the wires against your roll cage, you're going to have a bad time. Every chassis harness comes with this label here, and what that is it tells us exactly which chassis harness you have. In case you sell it or you purchase it from somebody else, we can always look up all of the records and technician notes that are on this harness and exactly what we wired into it. Seen here is what we have behind your driver's side of the dashboard. This particular harness has the OEM cluster, an X20 connector pin for OBD1. OBD2 pinout is different. Please let us know which one you have. If you don't know, just let us know that and we'll work with you. It has the OEM tumbler for your key to energize the ignition on and activate your starter. You have your 12 pin here for your blinkers and your high beam to activate off your OEM stalk. We have your OEM brake pedal connector. These vary, which is why we have to ask which one you have, which is why we also ask for pictures. Pictures help us help you. So here's the X20 connector. It's pinned for an OBD1. Next we have the OEM cluster. So these connectors are very difficult to source. So if you look carefully, you can see one says blue and one says white. And on the back of your cluster, there will be a blue opening for one and a white opening for the other. And then this little guy is black, so that's all good. Here is your OEM headlight connector, and this is your OEM fog light button. So what we do with the fog light button is we can repurpose that as a flying lead in your inputs and outputs, or use it to activate a relay. So that's a very handy thing that we use. If you have an OEM cluster, we will wire in these 3 extra wires for any aftermarket gauges. These 3 wires are pink, red, and brown. So you have pink for ignition on, you have red for running lights, and you have brown for ground. The brown is meant to be used with the red wire for the running lights. So when you turn on your lights, the gauges also illuminate. It's not meant to be used for the actual gauge itself. Per the gauges installation instructions, which we always revert back to the actual products installation instructions when it's not ours, it states that you need your own dedicated ground for every gauge. So that's really important. Here we have a switch panel. So we have 5 rocker switches on this particular harness. We have one for your wipers, which will energize this disconnect, this blue wire here that's labeled wiper. We do not wire in the ground, that's on you guys. But what this does is it's a 30 amp relayed circuit, also known to us as an adder relay. So when you activate this switch, it'll energize your wipers. They will not park, you'll have to catch it at the right point. Then we have 2 more adder relays, a trigger switch, and your hazard button. So you'll see your switch panel also goes to a Deutsch disconnect. All the switch panels will always disconnect. That goes back to, once again, us making a product that's as easy as we can for you guys to install. We want to take all of the headache out of the installation process that we can for you guys, because this can get pretty crazy and out of hand very quickly. So here off this disconnect with the wiper adder relay is we have a pink 12 gauge flying lead. This is an additional or a second ignition on circuit. So at this point in the game, we're adding so much into these harnesses that we need a second ignition on relay because one wasn't enough. So we leave that as a flying lead for you guys to pick up. You can use it for a radio. You guys can use it for a CB. There's a wide variety what you can do with it. Some people use it for a USB, a cigarette lighter, things of that nature. What we have here, we still won't talk about. You got to buy one to find out. So this is like the center of behind the dash, and this is the driver's behind the dash side. So now we're going to move over to the passenger side where we build you guys your custom fuse block. Here we have the passenger side behind the dashboard area. You'll notice that we have your custom made fuse block, and that has about 3 feet to the battery constant, which we pick up power on this E36 chassis harness from your OEM distribution power block. So that's why we ask if you guys have that. If not, we need to know where it is because we need to know where to pick up power. We have your LED blinker relay wired in. This will work with aftermarket LED taillights, corner lights, bulbs, all of that nature. You have your front disconnect, which again, this is to make your life as easy as possible. When you're installing the chassis harness, you route the front and it just plugs right into the main. Here we have what we like to call our inputs and outputs, which once again is a Deutsch disconnect, and we do that for you guys. So here's pretty cool because we have a couple different things in here. So we have pink, which we talked about, which is ignition on. We have orange, which is battery constant. We have red again, which is running lights. So because this one has an OEM cluster, we also wired in the extra one in the middle for aftermarket gauges, but we give you extras on the passenger side just in case you want to do anything else with it. So here we have 2 trigger switches. One is off the rocker switch that we custom build, and the other one is the OEM fog light button on the headlight switch. So it just so happens that both of these are gray, but one is a gray and purple and one is a gray and yellow. So what these are what we like to call trigger switches. And all they do is send a switch power or a switch ground from one point in the harness to another, which you would pick up right here in your inputs and outputs. You can use these for a wide variety of different applications, such as activating a relay, nitrous, power for a GoPro charger, a USB, a cigarette lighter, something small, a small draw, which is different than our adder relay, which is a 12 gauge flying lead as seen here, which is a 30 amp relayed protected circuit. There is a major difference between a trigger switch and an adder relay. If you have any questions about that, just give us a call, shoot us a DM, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. A trigger switch is a small draw, and an adder relay is up to a 30 amp relayed protected circuit. So it's a big difference. An adder relay can be used for such things as underglow, radio, wiper, a blower motor up to 30 amps again, a second fuel pump. Adder relays can be ignition on or activated from a rocker switch, which is a question we ask you in the questionnaire. The questionnaire is very important. That tells us all about your build so we can customize the product to your specific build. And this is not a one size fits all, comes out of a box, doesn't fit well, and goes down that windy road. So all of our chassis harnesses are essential function only. This is not a full replacement. This is the necessities that you need to get your car operational, the brake lights working, the tail lights working, headlights operational, if possible, the OEM cluster. So we just want to make a point that none of this is ever meant to be used with fans. Do not use our product with fans. You will instantly void the warranty. One thing I want to point out is all of our grounds will always have black heat shrink, and our powers will always have red heat shrink. That's universal across all of our builds. So there you have it. There's the breakdown of our E36 chassis harness. Every chassis harness is different, whether it's the E46, the E36, the E30, the S13, the S14, or the RX-7 FC, which we're working on right now in the R&D phases. No two are the same, And we ask that you guys fill out the questionnaire because that will tell us what you have and we can build off of that. Every single detail about automotive wiring is as important as anything else. You only get one chance with wiring. I feel like that's why a lot of people stray away from it, which is why we ask so many detailed questions about exactly what you have, because every detail down to the most minimal thing matters to have a great end result. At this point in time, we're not affiliated with any aftermarket PDM companies. We do not wire up to them. We are using the relays and fuses that have been around for over 100 years, and they've done just fine for us. We like to keep this as simple as possible for you, the customer, to have an easy installation. PDMs get very pricey and are very temperamental, and we don't want you guys to have any problem, which is why we stick to the original relays and fuses, because if for some reason you do pop a fuse or a relay, it's very easy to change it. The most simplest details make such a difference, even down to your grounding wires and where you're going to actually ground the harness. These have been extended because the OEM grounding point on the door jamb side of the dashboard has been removed. So we lengthen these so the customer can ground them accordingly in a clean area. Stress on the clean. Grounding points are so important. Details matter. We need to know all about your fuel pump circuit. You need to inform us the amp draw, and you need to let us know what type of engine ECU you're using. We always recommend any decent build to have an aftermarket engine ECU. Most, I would say 95, if not 99% of aftermarket engine ECUs put out a switched ground signal. For this E36 chassis harness, we're picking up the fuel pump signal from the X20 connector, which puts out a switched power versus a switched ground. So that is very important information that we need to receive from you guys so we know how to wire up the harness accordingly. The more information you tell us on the questionnaire, the more information we have to customize the harness and make it as simplistic for you as possible. Our goal is from a customer standpoint of view on their installation. We want you guys to plug everything in, hook up the grounds, hook up the powers, and turn your key and go. We don't want you to have any hiccups. We've only received a handful of phone calls. We're at almost 100 harnesses built, and we've maybe received 5 phone calls of people that had issues, which I would say 4 out of 5 was a grounding point that was painted over. When you paint anything and you're hooking your ground back up, you want to clean the grounding point as best as you can, whether it's with a wire wheel, a wire brush, sandpaper, cleaning the grime off the bolt. All these little details matter in the end. All of our chassis harnesses are built in-house by car enthusiasts just like you. We don't skip on any of the details, and we try and build these as easy for you guys to install as we can. We are a small family-owned business right here in the USA, in the state of Connecticut. We go out of our way every step of the way to make sure that the customer gets the best product they can. All of our chassis harnesses are high quality at a very reasonable price for all car enthusiasts alike. Us, ourselves, are all car enthusiasts, which is why we have constant meetings and we're constantly reevaluating everything we do to make sure we provide the customer the most simplistic, easy to install, yet proper product that we can. Everything we do for you guys. So support your local small businesses, whether it's automotive wiring, fabrication, tire shops. Those are the real people that have your back, that answer the phone when you call.